feeling misunderstood, escalating conflicts, or just never quite syncing up in conversations. These are the common issues that us ADHDers and ADHD partners can experience sabotaging our relationships. A lot of us ADHDers can face challenges in communication, but these problems don't have to define the relationship. In this video, we're going to talk about the hidden obstacles that ADHD creates in communication, and I'm going to provide you with some practical strategies to overcome them. So, let me know if this resonates with you. As an ADHDer, you're in a conversation with your partner, and suddenly you forget what they just said, or perhaps you forget what you said. Or maybe you find yourself reacting strongly to a small request, and this leaves your partner confused. These two examples are really common ways that ADHD can disrupt our communication in relationships. You know, ADHD can often lead to really tricky communication pitfalls. Forgetfulness can make it seem like we're uninterested, emotional dysregulation can lead to overreactions, and rejection-sensitive dysphoria can make us feel attacked even when no attack is intended. And these issues can strain ADHD relationships really significantly. But this doesn't mean that they are unfixable. We're going to break down 7 effective strategies to help you navigate these communication challenges. And by the end, you're going to have a toolkit to start enhancing your relationship communication and strengthen your bond with your partner. So let's explore why these misunderstandings happen. It's really frustrating when your partner seems upset over something that you didn't even realize was an issue. So ADHD traits like forgetfulness and inattention play a really big role in these miscommunications. So let's say you're in a conversation with your partner and you suddenly forget what they said. They don't necessarily know that this isn't about a lack of interest, but your brain processes information differently. But your partner is likely to interpret this as disinterest or a lack of commitment, lack of care. This disconnect can lead to really hurt feelings and arguments that seem to come out of nowhere. Another challenge is rejection-sensitive dysphoria, or RSD, and this affects about 70% of us ADHDers. So RSD can make even minor criticism feel like a personal attack. So for example, if your partner asks why you forgot to pick up the milk, you might feel like they're questioning your reliability or your commitment, and this can lead to an unnecessary argument. And then there's emotional dysregulation. Then this is another issue where emotions can escalate really rapidly. So 1 minute you're having a calm discussion, and next you take something as a personal attack from your partner, and you're suddenly in a heated argument. It's as if our emotions have a mind of their own, and this causes things to spiral out of control really quickly. So it's really crucial to start understanding these patterns in order to break out of the cycle of miscommunication. As an ADHDer, by recognizing what's happening, you can start to address it effectively. And then you can start working together to communicate a lot more clearly, not blaming yourself or your partner or your ADHD. And just before I move forward, if you do want more videos on relationships, communication, and even ADHD, then feel free to subscribe to my channel for new videos every single week. So what are these strategies to start overcoming some of these ADHD communication challenges in relationships? So the first strategy is to use verbal cues. So verbal cues are basically pre-agreed words or phrases to pause and reset the conversation when things get heated. So I'll discuss in a bit how to implement this strategy in detail, but essentially these are little flags to raise up and say, hey, this conversation is going a little bit left. Let's take a pause and get back to the main point. So for example, using a unique term like banana or aardvark during an argument can act as a pause button, and it gives you both a moment to cool down and approach the situation with a bit of a clearer mindset. As an ADHD, this helps us to start to emotionally regulate ourselves as well as gather our thoughts and feelings in order to be able to communicate much more effectively moving forward. The next strategy is to practice do-overs. This is a technique that creates a judgment-free space to correct statements that you wish you would phrase differently. So as an ADHDer, we can often say things that we don't necessarily mean, we don't even necessarily want to say, but our impulsivity meant that it came out in a very specifically wrong way. So let's say you say something that doesn't come out as intended, you can ask, hey, can I maybe take a do-over? So for example, let's say that you say, hey, you always shout at me, you're such a nag. But what you really ultimately meant to say was, I sometimes feel a little bit spoken down to, and I feel a bit insecure that I forget to do things. Being able to take a do-over means that you've caught yourself saying something you didn't really necessarily want to say or necessarily feel, and be able to rephrase it into a much more constructive way. The third technique is to focus on the feelings. So this approach uses the structure, when X happened, I felt Y, I would like Z. So it helps you to communicate your emotions without blaming or accusing. So for example, if instead of saying, you're always late and it's so disrespectful, you might say, when you arrived at our dinner date, I felt a little bit frustrated and unimportant. And I would love for us to figure out a plan to be able to make sure that we both arrive at the same time in the future. This avoids pointing the finger of blame and actually gets to the point and actually starts to direct the conversation towards a solution. These strategies significantly improve communication, and it provides a bit more structure and clarity, and it reduces misunderstandings and conflicts. So these are kind of foundational strategies, but let's start to delve into a bit more advanced communication skills. These techniques might take a bit more practice, but are really powerful tools for fostering deeper communication and understanding. So first, it's really important to start to practice mindfulness. This may sound very woo-woo, but mindfulness, it helps us to focus not only on our emotions during the conversation, but also the next steps to take rather than thinking 5 steps ahead. This means being fully present and aware of your thoughts and feelings without judgment. So when emotions arise during a discussion, pausing to check in with yourself, noticing physical sensations like tension or a racing heart, building this self-awareness helps you to manage your reactions in communication better. Next is soft starts. The soft starts technique involves framing difficult conversations with observations and feelings rather than criticism. So what does a soft start involve? A soft start is essentially pre-validating your partner's potential feelings in a conversation. So let's say, for example, you wanted to talk about the chores. And you think that by approaching this conversation, your partner is going to think that you just want to be lazy. You can address and validate those feelings before you even start the conversation. So for example, you can say, hey, I want to talk about doing the dishes, but I know that it may come across like I'm trying to be lazy or I'm trying to push off the blame onto you, but I promise you that that's not what I'm trying to do. All I'm trying to do is just open up a conversation to see if we can get to a solution. Would that be okay? Presenting a soft start to this conversation helps to pre-validate your partner's potential feelings, restating your intent of the conversation. And this is just one part of a larger toolkit. This is what I work on with my ultra-normal members. And if you do want a deeper dive into all of this, then join me in my free relationship bootcamp, where you'll learn the same steps and tools that all of my members use to start turning their relationships around. Simply click on the link in the description to grab your spot today. Next, validation is a really crucial tool. And I've actually done a deeper dive on this, which I'll link to above and in the description down below. But validation essentially acknowledges your partner's feelings and perspective, even if you disagree. So for instance, you might say, I understand that you are potentially feeling frustrated about the chores right now. Even though I think that I see things a little bit differently, I can understand why you would feel that way right now. Validation helps to de-escalate conflicts, and it makes your partner feel heard and respected. Being able to master validation is one of the most crucial tools that you can have within a relationship. It helps to alleviate most relationship arguments and helps to build a path forward to overcoming the more logical discords, the more day-to-day challenges that relationships face. And like I said before, these are part of a larger toolkit, which I've actually done a deeper dive video, which I'll link to on the screen, is a much bigger subject. And there are a lot of mistakes that are very easy to avoid in relationship communication. So it's really important to build your toolkit as you go in order to be able to navigate complex conversations and be able to simplify these conversations down into their components in order for our ADHD brain to be able to process them. So I'll leave you with that deeper dive on relationship communication, and I will see you over there.